Hi, my name's Kate Bateman. I'm going to be discussing Nancy, who is a student in my art classroom. Nancy is 11 years old. She's in the 5th grade. She is from Guatemala and currently is living in Syracuse. And this is her first year here. And in my experience with her, she has been really excelling in the art room. She's doing fantastic work. And that can be related to her having art in the past in her past school and having it not be such a foreign concept. Um, and she's also been doing building friendships and meeting people. Currently, she's in the early production and speech emergence stages, and within the next year, she'll likely meet speech emergence. So, before I get started talking about what our lesson is, we're going to be covering Henry Rousseau and talking about how I would jumpstart that lesson. I would like to talk a little bit about Nancy's culture and how that's going to relate into this lesson. So, considering Guatemala and its culture, it is very critical to think about how art and nature play a role in that environment. So, for Guatemala, they're full of master craftsmen. Art is a really critical part of life and creating products, producing income. So, that's not something that would be wildly unrecognizable to Nancy. And then also the importance of nature in Guatemala. So in Guatemala, nature is highly respected, it's honored, it's practiced. So both those key terms play a huge part in this lesson, which you can kind of see a little bit later as I go on. The other thing that Nancy can relate to in this lesson is she can relate to Rousseau, who's our artist. So Rousseau created paintings that weren't of places he had ever been before. He created beautiful jungle scenes that were produced by visiting botanical gardens and looking at images, and never really anywhere he could go. So Nancy can relate to that in a lot of ways by thinking about where she's lived and her environment now and how those are different, and consider the different things that she's seen in life that other people may have not, and how she can apply that in her artwork. So that's really exciting for this lesson that she can relate in those ways. So in order to jumpstart this, I have an objective written just for the lesson, or just for the jumpstart, and that is to review keywords we will use throughout our next lesson. So as I said, it's about Henry Rousseau, and the first thing that I would want to do with Nancy is to go over a definition sheet. And on this sheet, it would be a sheet that has the words, but then also has a blank area for her to write notes, to write her own definition, to draw a picture that can help her better understand. And so going through those vocabulary words with her, they include contrast, camouflage, observation, and spatial relationships. So those are 4 key concepts that everybody in the lesson will be learning, but I really want to make sure that Nancy has those down before we get into the environment with all of her peers. So in order to better talk about this with her, I would like to show some visual representations of that. So for example, for contrast, I might talk to her a little bit about why one color might be different or darker or lighter than another color. For example, those black and blue circles, what's a contrast between them? Same thing goes for camouflage. We would talk about what camouflage is, how have you seen that before, do animals use that, and why. Observation would get dedicated towards what we'll be doing in the lesson. So in the lesson, we'll be looking at images and observing them, and then replicating them in our artwork. And we talk a little about that, and the spatial relationship would be how different things align in a space, how they relate, and how that forms a composition. So we would go through that. I'd give her some visual examples so that she can really get those down, create a definition for herself. The next thing that I would do with Nancy is to talk through a video transcript. So within the lesson, we'll be watching a video, and prior to getting there, I'd like her to be able to read through what the content will be and better understand it. So in giving her that translation, we would read through it together, and I would ask her to highlight any of the words she doesn't know, and then underline words that she might need a reminder on. As she does this, we can talk about it a little bit, but I would hope that she can use that translation during the actual video, and that'll help her kind of follow along better, really get the gist of what we're trying to get at in that video as we're doing it in class. And then the final thing that I would do to jumpstart this lesson would to be reviewing a Quizlet that would be developed for Nancy. So if you haven't used Quizlet before, it's a really awesome tool that allows you to create study sets online. And so in that study set for her, it would have all the things about Rousseau that she will need to know. For example, it would have all of our vocabulary words, as well as the words she highlighted that she doesn't know, and then and the words that she underlined that she'd like a reminder on. And so by doing that, she can go in on her own time when she has time in class, and she'll be able to use that study set to make flashcards. It gives you games, it has matching. So Nancy will be able to use that set for her to review throughout the lesson as need be. The final thing that I want to talk about is quickly I'll go through the lesson and how I'll support Nancy throughout that lesson, and then we'll go on from there. So in the lesson, basically some of the things that you need to know will be that, like I said, we'll have the video that really introduces our topic, and Nancy will already be briefed on that and ready to go. The other thing to consider is how I'll be introducing the actual materials. So when introducing the lesson, I would be sure to talk about what they are expected to do and demonstrate at the same time. So by demonstrating at the same time, Nancy and the other students can see what I'm expecting of them, what I'm asking of them to do in the project, on the visual level, on the level of me demonstrating it, talking it, and so on. And the final thing that I would need to make sure at the end of the first day, what I would do with Nancy is that I would meet with her individually one more time and go over what the project expectations are. So really clarify what her steps in the project need to be, how she's going to complete it, what I'm looking as a teacher to see in the project so that she is successful in that lesson. So that's my lesson. This is how I would jumpstart it, and I hope that this would help Nancy in the future.